bring forward an all counter offer
It was.
this time around. I'll turn it over to you.
Perfect. So we have thought a lot about this salary proposal here and what we want to see in the direction for it to head. We worked on several different models before kind of coming up with what we're going to pass across today. We've taken into consideration inflation, specifically from years 2019, 2020. So right when the teacher, the base raises started, right where we had all the compression, and then so people at the top stopped getting raises, and that was about a 20% inflation rate. So we've taken that into consideration. We've run some different numbers. We've workshopped through several different ways that we could break up or decompress it or allocate money to groups evenly. And we've settled on this that we think is reflective of current inflation between 2022 and now 2023. So it's obviously not going to hit us at that 20%. That to do 20% inflation, in case we wanted to go that route, is about $12 to $14 million of salary. I think we could probably find it. But we've taken a more conservative approach to this.
We are.
Yeah.
I'll shake every one of you upside down before it comes out.
We'll go on the ropes course.
It's empty everywhere.
So we worked on a few different things here to kind of capture some of the inflation that's happened and start to move in a direction towards not necessarily a decompression, but a more balanced salary schedule that accounts for what's been going on in the economy and kind of helps us recoup and catch up to where we're at. So what we are proposing is that year zero would get a flat $1,000, bringing them to 48. So it puts them above that minimum requirement of 47.5. It shows some commitment to our new teachers that are starting in the district that not only are we at the minimum, but we're above. And then for every year after that, it's a flat 7%. And so we worked through a lot of numbers to get to that point. We had worked on a decompression model where we started at one version and worked it out. And we think that the best method here is a flat 7% for everybody on the pay scale. It keeps years 0 through 16 still in like one range of salary. And we are thinking that our placement schedule, right, because we no longer have steps, our placement schedule will remain what the current salary is, except for bringing up everyone to 48,000. And that's gonna be $7.5 million.
When you say the placement schedule would.
So when we look at the overall salary schedule, right now, everyone's at 47,000 through years 15, and then it goes 47 all the way to 67. Yeah.
So really what it would be year 0 would be 48 and every
years
year
0
after.
through 16 would be 48,000. And then everyone else would remain at the same placement place that they're at right now. Then right now would
So
be the
you
placement
you would
schedule.
recommend, you were saying 0 differentiation between 1 and 16 essentially.
And then
And
the
actually it would have to climb because I think that
it
It goes up
climbs,
1 year.
it goes up
Yeah.
1 year to 16. But in that group, they're getting a 7% raise, which I think is based on the models that we had run, is a better proposal than trying to decompress and giving smaller raises to the bottom half, because the majority of our unit is falling in 0 through year 7 essentially. And so we didn't want to leave them behind by giving them a very small raise in an effort to decompress, where we could give a flat 7%, that our people up at the top, years 17 and on, are going to receive a higher raise simply because their salaries are higher, right? That 7% would go further. So that's where that comes from.
okay, so your outcome would not provide for any differentiation on the scale between 1 and 16.
No.
And so
Yeah, I think that we appreciate you guys putting this forward. I mean, we talked about this earlier in terms of what the TISA amount look like.
Mhm.
And, you know, we have come around and, we had an initial $2.2 million for TISA.
Yeah.
Right? We have gotten our, our numbers, and so we figured out what additional money we have to offer,
Mhm.
but it doesn't come anywhere close to $7.5 million. I mean, that's probably, we probably are of that at this point in time. So, I mean, we have some ideas. I think that we are able to come off the original number, right? And I
Okay.
think that we'll go back and have a little conversation around your offer, and then I can bring back a counter to
Mhm.
this salary proposal that will get us a little bit closer, but 7.5 is just out of the realm.
So we think that it's very important to have a percentage raise. I know that your initial proposal had a flat amount right across the years, and and then plus years of service at an amount that would continue to add in. We think that a percentage raise is the direction to move forward in, that it provides the differentiation. It's been talking all day. It provides that across the board and allows those at the top to continue to receive a more equitable raise because they're getting a higher raise due to their already higher salary.
I can appreciate that. I
So
mean,
that's-
I disagree. I can appreciate that.
Just, could you speak a little louder? The folks in the back can't hear with the AC. That's all.
Sure. I can appreciate that. And I think that generally speaking, one of the reasons we've gone away from the percentage raises has been legislative, right?
Mhm.
Our hands have been tied by
Yeah.
the governor in terms of the requirements of the TISA money,
Mhm.
right? And right now, I think our hands are tied by the fact that we want to provide some differentiation. One of the things that we see as a major issue, and obviously we'd like to do more to provide for differentiation on the scale, but having everyone come in between 0 and 16 for us is just not something that we want to continue to do. So we'd like to try to provide for some level of differentiation on the schedule, and then set it, and then in future years look at possibly going back to a percentage. Right now, I think there's about a $2,000 gap between what the more veteran teachers have received and what those individuals who are right now between 0 and 15 on the scale have received.
Mhm.
And so we'd like to try and, in this year, contribute a majority of the money that we do have available towards closing that gap.
Mhm.
And then also providing for some level of differentiation with the understanding that we've got a limit on how much we have, right?
Mhm.
So in future years, we'd like to try and continue to build out that gap, but also do so by utilizing percentages, right?
Yeah.
So when we come back with a counter, we'll expand.
So I think some of the consideration that we had taken when we took this step to go to that 7% across the board, which is compressing that 0 or continues that 0 through 16, was the confusion around placement schedule versus steps, right? And we're not doing steps. And so when people are looking at the scale, and this is something that we've had workshops around and we've had these conversations about, and we start decompressing it, right? And I'm a year 7 and next year I'm a year 8, but I'm not moving on that scale, right? I've been placed. And so I think that that's where a lot of the confusion comes when we want to go and decompress it, which was our initial conversation and thought was what we wanted to do. And at the workshops, we had discussed it, that was very important to us. But then when we're not re-stepping people and people are continuing to not really understand how their salaries are developed or made, or they reference a contract point from 2 or 3 years ago. They're like, well, I'm not doing this. And by keeping them kind of contained in that group, it does make it a little bit easier for people to understand that salary. And we don't have to worry about the confusion of, well, am I going up a year? Am I not going up a year? As much as we want to honor years of service, I think that that's something that we can look at moving forward after we.
Would it help to do, I mean, I know this is sort of administrative minutia to some extent, but would it help to do some sort of training that relates back to exactly how, so that your members may understand how their salaries are determined. Because I think that, just the idea of, unfortunately, I think that the two are getting conflated.
Mhm.
There used to be a long time ago an actual step plan where every year you would move up on the
Yeah.
plan, right? That the legislature sort of took that away to pay for performance.
Mhm.
And what we operate with now is essentially use the placement schedule to basically.
Mhm.
Right, so if we negotiate $1,000 raise, that individual who comes in at 47,000 is then given an add-on in our system for 1,000.
Mhm.
And then you add the two up and their salary is 48,000, right? And then the next year they get another add-on based on our
Yeah.
negotiations. And the two add-ons are added on to the 47,000
Mhm.
to develop their salary. And so
Yeah.
it is a complicated method. I wish that we could come up with an easier method, right? To some extent that, I know that here we
We're
go,
looking
right?
right at here.
To some extent, it
Go for it.
is complicated by what the
Yeah.
laws have been put in place.
Because
But,
I think that there's a lot of like comparing that happens within schools, right? Him and I are both year 20 teachers. He's at a different point because he's been in the district for all 20 years. So he's seen these add-ons, this, that, and the other. I just started here. I'm a year 20 teacher. We're at different points. And so having those conversations, you're making what, I'm making what, and we can't hide the fact that that's what's going on, right? That people are sitting around comparing. And when it's very much publicized, right? I can go onto the LCTA website and go on the LCS website and pull the salary schedule. Our students know, or everybody can see this. That's what you're making. It's like, well, somewhere around there, it's something like that. And then you've got the, the added factors of 8.5 day. Some people are still experiencing what is it, advanced degrees. It's not as a supplement, but it was factored in as a salary if they've been here long enough. So there are all these factors that go in that create that disparity amongst everybody. Is we're all year 20 teachers, but we're all at a different point in time on the salary schedule, and how do we figure out what that really ends up looking like at the end of the day?
I mean, I think it's complicated. I think the whole idea of supplements and the salary schedules bring a lot to the table.
Mhm.
One thing that that we've been talking about, and this is sort of a little bit of a departure from the current proposal, but I think that we really need to consider looking at a separate salary schedule for certain members of your unit. I know last year we focused a lot on those speech pathologists and those school psychologists.
Mhm.
And one of the things that is disheartening as it relates to that. So I was happy that we were able to move their supplement amounts up for those very specialized roles.
Mhm.
But the supplements that they're receiving in a lot of cases are not FRS supplements.
Of course, yeah.
Right. So they're not getting credit on their retirement for those supplements. And so it would be nice to be able to consider creating a different scale for those individuals
Mhm.
that would take into consideration their years of experience on a separate scale.
Mhm.
Considering the fact that in many of those cases they require a master's degree or additional certifications. We have an extremely hard time filling those positions as we've talked in depth in the past. We end up turning to the private sector and having to outsource these things for an exorbitant amount
Mhm.
when we could, really come close to solving the issue by creating a new scale.
Mhm.
So I'd like to put that out there and just have you guys talk through that and
We could
see if
probably
you
do
will
it for, like,
consider that.
12
Sorry.
We could probably do it for 12 million.
Ha,
We could,
Yeah. Yeah.
There's always a way.
You guys are going to give us 12 million. Great.
I paid my taxes already. Thank you. I just wanted to add on something to make kind of a distinction that it's not that we are not differentiating the salary schedule. There's not enough money to differentiate the entire schedule, right? And
Yeah.
so we focused more on giving a respectable amount to the base, but then differentiating the top. I think your approach is to differentiate the bottom.
And I think we agree, in philosophy, in that it's important to differentiate at this point in time, those more veteran teachers who have missed out on increases the last couple of years.
Yes.
The variable is really just how much money we have. And so unfortunately, we only are provided with a certain amount of money in recurring funds that can be used towards salary increases. And so, and it's not $7.5 million. It may be $7.5 million if you include everybody in the entire district, right? But when it comes down to your unit alone, we don't have 7.5 that has been dedicated to, providing increases for that group. So we have to figure out a way to prioritize those individuals while also working within the means that we have. Okay. And I think that, we're prepared to come off of the initial $2.2 million that we discussed initially that was based on TISA alone and provide what we consider to be a really fair amount towards that is in addition to that TISA amount. But it just doesn't approach the 7.5 million that you guys are asking.
Is there the opportunity to move funds from one category of spending to the instructional salary category of spending? Is there an overage somewhere that we could utilize to move things around?
If there was an overage, it would already be there. Every month, every penny's budgeted in the area needed.
They did open up some of the categoricals this year,
right.
but that's already been taken into consideration when we talk about what money we do have available.
I mean, do you have a suggestion? Do you have something
I
you're
think-
looking at?
You want to talk about it or want me to talk about it?
I can talk about it a little
Go
bit.
ahead.
The materials and supplies budget
Mhm.
has been over budgeted by about,
Okay, I'm gonna lose my patience here, but go ahead.
I'll be, come on.
No, we have done this every year
That's-
for 20 years.
Done what every year for 20 years?
Discuss that 5, 10, okay.
All right.
That
I'll
budget,
discuss a different
I
thing
have gone
instead.
over it at least 20 times trying to explain it. That's not an over budget there. It's where different things are budgeted and moved as the school year goes on.
Right, that's your dump pot where you just keep extra money and you
No,
pull it out,
no,
then we don't understand.
No, our extra money is in fund balance. If there's money budgeted in that 5, 10, it's budgeted to a specific cost center for a specific purpose.
When you have the DSB with an amount and the AFR is a lower amount because that money was reassigned
Apples and
somewhere
oranges,
else.
Chris, apples and oranges.
All right, so another thing, which again is beating over the head from year to year, is every year since 2021. You project you'll have a fund balance of around 4%, 4 to 5%. And we've hammered on this in bargaining for the past 2 years, right? And then every year it turns out to be 18, 17%.
And part of that is restricted, that can only be spent. If you look at the unrestricted fund balance, it's
am.
3 to 5%. No, you're not.
The
That
unassigned-
unrestricted fund balance is not,
Are you talking about unassigned or under? So I'm looking at the unassigned and assigned fund balances and adding those
and in
together.
the unassigned is also projects that can only be spent. That's not all just money that can go. The assigned are
Mm-hmm. Right.
things like state categoricals.
But
If
you
you
would know
look at
it'd be
the
reflected in the
definitions
budget.
that they put, what we have
Yeah,
to
sure.
put in there,
And that would be reflected in the budget because you'd be locked into spending those in categoricals like you're describing.
and they are.
Right, so that's already locked in. We acknowledge that. So what's not locked in is what comes out to be, oh, we're able to spend so much less and this huge amount we projected to be at 4%, 8 million, and we're at 17%, 40 million, right? And you're saying that all that difference is locked up categoricals, that's untouched?
Some of it is,
Some of
yes.
it, exactly,
Yes,
some of it.
yes, but it also, you're looking at the end of the year. This is how much is left at the end of the year. Okay, it's kind of like your checkbook. When you paid all your bills,
Mhm.
you got, I'm making this up, you got $1,000 left.
Yeah.
That's your fund balance.
Yeah.
But then when you go to budget for the next month, if your utility bill goes up higher than it was before, or your car breaks down,
Yeah.
you gotta pay for your car. When we go to rebudget in the next year, that 40 million isn't 40 million that just rolls into 40 million
I
again,
understand
okay?
that, yeah.
We didn't get enough from the state legislature that covers the increases, with increases being retirement, health
understand that.
insurance, utilities, gas. So that 40 million, when you roll it forward, we have actually left after we budget everything, I think it was like $14 million.
Mhm.
Okay, so it's not 40 million, it's 14 million.
And so I will reiterate the basic premise is that, to your point about home budgeting, if you budgeted, I will have $400 in savings at the end of every month, and you had $1,400 in savings at the end of every month, year after year after year after year, and your kid needed braces and you said, we can't afford it, they would say, you're over budgeting 1,000 every month. What is this for? And you would say, my piggy bank. It makes no sense.
Well,
You would spend the money,
also, anybody that even, you want to do home budget, you want to do budget here,
whatever.
by
it's
law, we
okay.
have to have 3%.
You're well above
okay.
it, you know that.
No, we're not. We're about 1 or 2% above it. The other thing is, you have to, if something happened and we lost all our money, like
We hear
back
this
in.
every year, you know. You said it last year and the year
And
before
you're
and the
right.
year
And I'll
before,
see
and the
you
sky
next
has
year.
not
If I
fallen
was here
yet.
next year, the next year, next year.
Right,
But
And so
you
how
have
long
to
as the
have
sky
money
doesn't
in the
fall?
bank to
Yeah.
pay your bills.
that's
If
true, yeah.
something happened that our money got frozen, or we don't get the state money coming to us, or something
Right.
happens, we still have to pay the salaries of everyone in here.
Right.
We still have to pay the utility bill. We still have to pay the gas for the bus stop. So you can't have a minimal fund balance. That's just not fiscally responsible.
Right, but to your point then, so you want 15% fund balance, whatever it is, budget it. If you don't, you budget a 4% fund balance. So why, and it's totally inconsistent with the most basic premise of you want to budget more than 3%, let
We
me
did.
finish, you budget 1.24% above it according to your own DSV, 3 years in a row between 4 and 5%. If you want this huge amount of money to pay people, if an emergency happens, you have to budget that.
You don't have it to budget, Chris. We are spending it in other areas. If I had that kind of money to budget, we wouldn't be in here discussing the problem with having enough money to pay you guys, okay?
Right,
That's not,
So-
we don't have the, this is gonna go in circles, and I'm gonna agree to disagree with you. and
I guess what I don't
think it's fiscally
understand
responsible.
is looking at the numbers is how the numbers seem so far off from the explanation and the idea of what we can and can't spend, right? When the numbers are crunched and we're reading through the sheets and we're looking at the things, the numbers and then the explanation behind how they're locked up, you can't spend them, they're allocated to this, that, and the other, is just not reflected on these sheets.
What do you mean?
Right, it's not reflected on the AFR, and when you're looking at it, it says unassigned fund balance, and this is a year ago, $29 million in categorical 2750. And if it's an unassigned fund, where I don't,
Okay.
right,
Once
where's
again-
the disconnect
Okay,
on
well,
that?
because you're looking at a document that we fill out and send to DOE.
Yes.
You have to look at what their definitions are of unassigned, assigned, reserve. Unassigned does not mean that's free money to spend. Some of it is the unrestricted fund balance. Some of it are projects like the fee base from those are not considered an assigned by DOE. Assigned to them are the categoricals like textbooks. It's all in the definition of what this is their document. This is a information document, and when you're taking it at the end of the year without knowing what all goes into that document and what the actual workings on our side of it is, it's very easy to sit there and go, well, you've got too much here, you got too much there. I will throw out the fact that we are audited every year. DOE audits us, the auditors audit us. We're not, I mean, we don't have excessive amount of money sitting out there. If we did, we all want money. I mean, but I'll go back once again, a $14 million unrestricted fund balance is not fiscally safe for us if something happened. You don't spend everything. We're never going to do that. I'll tell you what, until April 30th of 2024, we will have a 4 or 5% fund balance.
Now,
Scott?
keep in
I
mind,
just had a question in regards to some comments and just honest, not here to poke or whatever. I just question. During your career, when has an emergency occurred that you speak of where you didn't receive funds from the state?
Back in, that's been a while, but we also had in 2007-8, the SBA shut down and had $40 million of our cash. We had to borrow from a bank to make payroll. We had with the,
With understanding that you were getting the money back anyway.
no, we never did. We never got 100% of our money. Okay, our money was frozen for well over a year. I was
Okay.
there.
Right.
Okay, then when the market crashed, you know, when the property values crashed and
Well, I
all that.
remember I didn't get salary increases for like 3 years.
None of the rest of us did either, Scott.
I know.
Okay, you weren't alone. We lost 11 or $12 million that year in the middle of the year. So if we had not, we had to make cuts, we had to reduce the fund balance, basically nothing at that point in time because and we didn't lay people off, if you remember. Then at the end of the year, when the legislature came back again, we had like 2 or 3 years of real slim years of not getting, they reduced the BSA. Yeah, they did.
I understand because.
So
that's where
you've
the-
got to have money in the bank to cover that. You don't know when it's gonna happen. If I had a magic crystal ball that would tell me it was gonna happen, it would, but you don't know when things are gonna happen. That's why you've got to have.
But you have also said on a couple occasions that in this group, we don't have the students. That was the other reason for not being able to have more money for salary. We don't have a student deficit. in
Yes,
the
we
sense
do.
that That's not what the data that's showing from last year to this year.
I don't know what data you're looking at, but our Leon County Schools is not growing.
I
I
would beg
do
to
have
differ. I
TV,
know
I
the
know
class size
your
is
stuff.
not changing at all.
I don't know what you're
You
talking
look at
about.
the class sizes from all the data, it's been 1-to-14 ratio every single time,
I don't,
every year.
class size has nothing to do with funding for FTE.
It does when you're talking about the people that you are having in front of the students in the
No, it
classroom.
doesn't.
No,
When it doesn't have a thing to do with the funding we get from DOE for our FTE.
but it shows the ratio is consistent and that
I don't know what it's,
once again,
I
the
don't know what
definitions
you're
come into
talking
play
about.
in deciding.
I think his point is that the ratio is shrinking and the students are leaving, the teachers should be coming down, but if you didn't fire anyone and the students are decreasing, how is the ratio?
well, we also have a teacher shortage where we don't have the teachers coming in to hire.
Right.
So no, the ratio, we have several schools that are pushing the class size.
And we have issues with hiring teachers because quite frankly, and I think this is something, not saying it's any issue or blame, but people can't afford to stay in the classroom when they're continually falling behind further and further, which is why the examples of what inflation costs, everything that's hitting everyone else is hitting us as well. But when we hear from the district that you're gonna go August 5th to go talk to the legislative delegation or whatever the lobbyist is doing, that I think those are some of the things some of our school board members have been talking about, being more deliberate about what the requests are and what it means in terms of being able to fund things and stabilize the schools in those conversations, rather than we have a tendency not to be specific enough about what the number amounts are when we're having those conversations. Just that, like, there's a need here. Just needs to be more specific, more deliberate, like some of our schools.
We understand that, for many years, in the last couple of years at the very least, we've talked about those numbers, class sizes, and that's one of your sticking points. And, we both know that there are various definitions that go around, what constitutes that class size number. We recognize that, when it comes to these students, we are down students. Is it as bad as we anticipated it would be at one point in time? No. But at the same point in time, that what we've done is make concessions with the money that we do have available to give to teachers. And we've made teachers a priority. We talk about, quite honestly, if you talk about what teachers are receiving in comparison to what our other units are receiving, it's significantly more. We've made a priority for our teachers. In fact, we've talked here recently at the last bargaining session, where Superintendent Hanna was looking to try and preserve 91 of these positions that have been brought in as interventionists. And he's at this point in time he's sort of given up on that and said, okay, forget it. I want to say, he wants to say 21 guidance counseling positions because he feels like those are very important to our schools and the supporting of teachers, right? But those other positions, he said, put them back in the pocket. And that's what's partially gotten us to where we're at with being able to offer more money than what we came to the table with the last. So, it doesn't do us an awful lot of good to sit here and argue back and forth about what's available, what's not available. At the end of the day, if we know what we have available to give and still be fiscally responsible, we don't, we're not going to overspend, and if we can't come to an agreement, then we know that there's a resolution in which our books will be looked at and a decision will be made regarding the recommendation. We don't want to get there. We would rather come to an amicable solution. All right, so we have an ability to counter at this point in time, and we'd like to do that. I don't think that it's gonna do us any good to continue to argue about what we have and what we don't have. We've got, Naomi's been here 30 plus 35 years, 34 years. She's been doing it a long time. And, I know that you guys have questions, but I can assure you that our books are above board.
No one's alleging they're below board. The way we discuss it is difficult to comprehend, particularly for me and other school districts, because I have all my other school districts quote their AFB, AFR, and DSB, and in our negotiations say, well, look, we did budget this last year and 2 years in a row. Look at our AFR. We didn't spend as much, blah, blah, blah. We think we can kick this back. We literally run off those numbers. And so do most of my colleagues in other counties. It's the only county I get told, don't look at the AFR DSB numbers. They're inaccurate for some.
No,
Not
you have
inaccurate,
not
not
said that.
inaccurate.
No,
I take that back.
stop.
I said I didn't mean inaccurate, but they are not portraying what, I don't know what phrase to even
No.
use. What is it? Why can't we use those numbers?
I'm not saying you can't, those are true numbers. It's the way you're interpreting the numbers and then trying to turn around and say that we aren't budgeting correctly and that this money could be spent here, and it can't. I have explained this, Chris.
Some of it.
What haven't I explained to you?
No, I'm saying some of the funds, some of it cannot be just put wherever, and some of it can't be
Correct.
put
And
wherever.
but we do that already. The AFR is
Sure.
reflecting how we ended up last year.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the picture of what it is. It's a
Yeah.
picture of what you have expended and what's left over.
Yeah.
That's the AFR. That's when I say you're comparing apples and oranges, because you can't take what's expended and compare to the budget, because that budget's like, it's a living, breathing document.
Which,
It
yeah,
changes
it allows you to
every
reassign.
day.
Exactly. So
Moving stuff around every day.
completely-
That's
I
why
agree
I'm saying
completely.
you can't look at those expenditures and say, well, you budgeted this much here, because there's a lot that happens with that budget through the year, like
Yes.
in it's probably the 300 object, it could be the 500 one you're looking at. The FES scholarships.
Mhm.
We budgeted $16 million for that. It's just an in and out, but we had to put it there. So it looks like there was $16 million there. It wasn't spent. It was reduced because the legislature or the DOE took it from us and sent it to the private schools. So you will see,
Right.
okay, there was $50 million budgeted here, but you consistently budget it, but you only spend 25 million. Hey, you should have, no, we don't, because that money disappeared by going to the scholarship. So that's why I'm saying you can't take and put them next to each other and make definitive statements that you budgeted this and you had this every year, you do this and you had this, you only spent this much.
Our generalized point with personal or district level bookkeeping is you have a budget for what everything's going to cost to run. And throughout the year, of course, you have to amend that budget. And at the end of the year, you write an AFR, which says, here's how we actually spend it. And then you say, okay, well, what did I budget for this? What did I spend for this in categories that make sense? And sometimes you're like, oh, wow, I budgeted 10 times as much as I needed. Maybe I could cut that in half next time. That's what we're saying.
Chris,
That's oversimplified, but
the point that we're making is, to be honest with
I
you,
mean,
if you want, but how many of y'all do my job? That's oversimplified. I'm sorry. I can't sit here. No.
But
No,
immediately,
I take that as,
immediately when I started to discuss it, you shot me down and said that I was incorrect. I have a master's degree in business. I've studied financial accounting. I teach financial accounting at community college. I write financial accounting
good for
curriculum.
you.
And
I'm very
you just
happy for you.
immediately dismissed
Because
my ability
Pam,
to read
Pam.
numbers.
ask Scott how many times he has brought this forward to us. Ask him how many times we have spent hours bringing back
I
spreadsheet
understand
upon
that.
spreadsheet upon spreadsheet, showing him what made, I'm sorry, I'm at a level of
I know.
frustration. I'm gonna have to take a break.
And when another person brings it up to have a
We're gonna take
conversation
a break.
about it,
Let her
No,
take a break.
I'm done.
Let her
I gotta take a break because I have had this discussion 25 times at least. Ask Scott.
we're gonna take a caucus.
What I would like, the one thing I'd like to say is, we know the resolution here. If we go to impasse, the whole book's good. We've talked about this on numerous occasions, that our books are above board. What we have available is legitimate. We're not going to tell you that we have one thing when we have something else, because we know that if we go to impasse, it's all going to be reviewed, right? So what we're putting out there, and I'm trying to do this in good faith. We want to talk about what we have to counter your offer with, right? Because we do plan to go above and beyond what we offer for. We don't have $7.5 million,
Mhm.
but I can assure you that just like we've talked, this issue, it is frustrating for her because every single year it's come up, and every single year we've defended the position. This was a major issue in front of the board last year, right? And so all we're saying is, if it takes going to not arbitration, but to a special master because of an impasse, that's what we'll do. But it's also going to take a year, and every person in this room wants to get paid. And we've prioritized. We have prioritized teachers. And we'll continue to prioritize teachers because you guys are important in this district. There's a teaching shortage. We're doing everything that we can. But at least here south, to cast stones and say that we're hiding money, and you're not saying that out, purposely. That's the undercurrent of your conversation.
I don't think
It's
that's
not.
not current. What we're saying is, as Naomi said, it's a living, breathing document, and that choices are made in that fund balance to whatever's going on there. That could be reallocated, could be looked at again. We don't even know what the projects are. You're saying it's all for future stuff. But I know from looking at other districts and looking at even some of the line items in here, like instructional salaries, it's really close. So there are things that we're saying, we're asking for reconsideration on that living, breathing document on what you have already budgeted those dollars for, because the issue and the crisis is now. Yeah, people want to get paid, but they want to get paid fairly. $900 or whatever the counter will be will not be fairly enough to keep these people in the classrooms. And that goes back to the 62% of people in their first 5 years, 70% that are not even gone through the college of education. We've got the instability and the turnover will just continue. And we have a shared interest to make sure we can stabilize that as best possible. It's not nefariousness. It's not saying it's not above board. It's choices with a living, breathing.
I understand, but I would also just ask you to consider the fact that we are putting teachers in front of every other employee in this district.
Part of that,
So given
understand.
what we have available,
but part of that is also legislatively, they have said that certain amounts of dollars have to go towards that minimum teacher part, that TISA money. So it may look, but outside of the TISA, what additional dollars, if you took TISA out and you compared what is
we
going
can
on,
talk about that.
I'm just saying that it's not a clear picture of just saying we're prioritizing, because legislatively, they have prioritized certain things with salary, with instructional staff right now. That's all.
They have. And I think that, we'll talk a little bit further about where we would like to be from a salary perspective. But once again, I think that we have made concessions on our side in coming up with additional funds to contribute to this, so that we started at $2.2 million. We've made concessions. We've eliminated the thought of saving or continuing to preserve these interventionists at the schools, putting those back in the pot. And, I think that's part of it. That was a real priority of the superintendent's that he's sort of walked back on because of the need to grow this pot of money to provide for teachers.
Yeah, I love this example because to Scott's point, right, we're not saying anything nefarious is happening. We're saying you guys create a budget to how you think everything should run, which makes sense, right? And then we oppose that. And you said there's no point in sitting here arguing. We argued about these positions for a year. And what happened, Rocky said, return them to the pool. So there was a point to argue about this position. Secondarily, they should have been budgeted in at the beginning of the year. You didn't hire them. And so the AFR would have reflected you didn't pay those people when you couldn't hire. You should have budgeted the interventionists at the schools.
No, they're
that you
hired.
couldn't hire. Oh, I thought they were unhired people.
No,
So people you can hire though, right? If they're budgeted for and then not hired at the end of the year, that creates some difference. And so our only point would be we can come and say, well, look at this difference. You budgeted this, you spent this. I think there's some wiggle room there. It's what we do in every other district. This is the only one that's like, no, it doesn't work like that. It literally works like that.
One of the things that if there's one thing that I've recognized from, being around the state and going to the various conferences and things like that, is that different districts do things very differently to comply with the same laws.
Yeah.
Right. And so you may see that it's not happening that way in other districts, but it doesn't mean that it's not appropriate and correct for the way that we've done things here in Tallahassee. Right. And so
I agree.
And so just to clarify, those interventionist people are the people that were funded by the
Yes,
ESSER funds, right?
Yeah.
And those funds are going away.
Okay.
And so, one of the things that Rocky prioritized was he wanted to be able to continue to fund those positions after that funding had gone away. And it's like 100 positions, a little less than 100 positions overall,
Sure.
which is a significant amount of money, especially when you consider it's recurring. Right.
Yeah.
So what does it cost to do this for 1 year? It's significantly different than what it costs to do it for ever. Right.
Yep.
So he sort of backtracked on that and said, okay, there's just not any way that we're going to be able to fund these people moving forward. Right. So what that means is all those people that are actually sitting in chairs, they're at schools working in interventionist positions, they're going to be going back into other positions within the school system.
Sure.
And, what does that mean for us? It means we're taking that money that we had otherwise planned to keep them in place and redistributing it out to help pay for the increase.
Sure.
And so that's where we stand. And so I think it is a good time to caucus so that we can, we would like to sort of get our thoughts together with regard to a counter offer to you guys. And then we can go from there. All right. So like 20 minutes.
Sure.
All right. 5:35. We'll come back. Thank you.
Where mine. Yours. These are mine. Do you want to?
I don't need to, but the record is the record. It's the record. It's easy, right? But not this personal copy. I don't know what you're talking about. How are you? Good. Okay, are you ready? Okay. All right, if we could, please. We're gonna get started again. So I've passed across the table our counter offer for compensation for 23, 24. What I'll do is just cover the individual bullets. Now, please, like we talked about before, for those of you who are able to get a copy, just understand the distinction between this document and what we call a step plan. This document is to be utilized only for the placement of new employees to our county, right? So if someone comes in to our district and they have 20 years of experience that's verified, we would go to year 20 on this and say, but that's what their starting salary will be. Okay. So just, I want to try and clarify that because I know that that caused a lot of confusion last time we had this conversation. Okay. All right. So what we're prepared to offer is a total compensation package of $3.78 million for teachers. And this would entail primarily of the following components, right? First, for teachers between 0 and 4 years, we would raise the base salary to $47,500. Those individuals would receive a $500 increase this year. And we would capture 47.5 on the scale for years 0 through 4. Okay. Then teachers with 5 years of experience and more will start with the differentiation of $1,000. So a person who's got 5 years of experience will get a $1,000 increase to $48,000 per year. All right. And then we will provide for differentiation at each level, each yearly level between 5 and 14 of $100. So if this can be illustrated by looking at the schedule, right? So for example, a person with 6 years is at 48.1, 7 years is at 48.2, 8 years is 48.3, 9 years is 48.4, all the way till you get to 15, which is 49,000. So from years 15 up, every teacher would receive $2,000 to their base. Okay. We would adjust in the schedule for years 16 and 17, just sort of place markers that span the difference to get us back on the schedule at year 18, right? So the placement for year 16 would be 49.2. The placement for year 17 would be 49.4. But those individuals would be receiving $2,000 based on their current rate of pay as an add-on, right? So if they make $50,000 now, they'll be making $52,000 after this increase, okay? And that's for all teachers above 15 years. So years of experience will be based upon the status of the teacher's verified years of experience at the beginning of the 23-24 school year. So it does not count this year. So if you had 21 years coming out of last year, you'll receive credit for 21 years on the schedule, based on the years of experience. It only really, I guess it matters for the years 5 to 14, but everyone over 15 years ago doesn't matter. Okay.
Bless
you.
Thank you.
All right, the scale will go into effect as the starting salary placement schedule for teachers and will be retroactive for 23-24. So for any of the individuals that were hired this year in 23-24, we would go back to the placement schedule that we're at right now. So because we're in our current meeting, this placement schedule. So a person with 0 years will be, you know, they would have started already at 47. Their salaries will be adjusted to 47.5. All right,
So you too have frozen most of this table, is that correct?
correct. The other thing that I'd like that's not on here, but the other thing that we'd like to point out is that this is something that we'd like to throw in as an added bonus, and it's also sort of a little bit of a hurrah, because you know, for years since I've been here, we've talked about leapfrog and the impact of leapfrogging that it has on our teachers. And leapfrogging, for those of you who don't quite understand, is when a current teacher makes less than the schedule says that they should for their year experience. So if Kim has 20 years of experience and she makes less than 50,988, then she's been leapfrogged. So as part of this proposal, we'd like to also resolve all of the leapfrogging that's on the books at this current moment, right? So we've gotten very close as it is. It's going to cost us about $55,000 extra to do that, but we've been able to do that because of the increases that we've received in the last couple of years, and the fact that we've sort of frozen the schedule.
Right.
But yeah, we'd like to throw that in to say, okay, leapfrogging is done.
Can you tell me exactly how you're going to resolve it? Like spell it out?
Yeah, for the I
Ask
will.
him.
I'll- So you want me to do that now? You want me to tell you how?
Just gonna
So
read-
basically, so
Yeah.
when we do that, when we put it on the actual offer sheet, we'll say we're resolving leapfrogging. But essentially what we've done is we've gone through and we've, based on this schedule, determined which individuals are making less than their years of experience, right?
Uh-huh.
So
And you're gonna-
just like we talked about, we'll push them up to at least the level that's on the chart.
Thanks.
And you know, like we said, we are not close to your $7.5 million, but this is what we have available. And I think that from a priority perspective, teachers have been made a priority in this district. We do have, I will note, we do have 2 other units and an entirely different group of employees that we're also sort of having to deal with this for. So, you know, we're making you guys a priority, and we feel like this is a significant increase over when we last talked about what salary we do. Okay. In terms of next steps, I mean, basically, just like for you guys, we would appreciate if you guys would consider that, and we'll go from there. In terms of additional items, I do have a couple of articles that I would like to just briefly discuss. We don't have a proposal to pass at this. Do y'all have
Do
questions?
we have any other things we want to address? I mean, I think that the only main concern is when we're looking at the numbers. Math-wise. We're at inflation at above 6% just in the past year. Even our highest raise on this schedule doesn't keep up with that, which is one of our main concerns. And I think you obviously knew that going into this, that it just wasn't going to keep up with inflation. And our proposal doesn't keep up with the 20% inflation between the start of the TISA and so on, but we're trying to get close. And so that's where we're coming from, is everyone's being impacted by this in different ways. And so that's kind of, I guess, how we'll close it off unless there's other questions.
I totally understand.
Mhm.
You know, we'd all like it to be more. you know, this is the money that we have available. Unfortunately, I'll take a, I've gotten this used, being in HR, I've gotten this used against me countless times in the past, but it's like, you know, as a school district, we don't have very many cash registers, right? We're not creating additional revenue. We're getting all of our revenue from the state or from taxes, right? And so we work with what we have to work with. And if we had the ability to go out and produce additional funds, I think we would all be out producing additional funds so that we could make more money, right? I think that this lagging, the idea of lagging with inflation is a reality that is taking place at every level, with every unit. You know, it happens with our LESP employees, it happens with our administrators. And so what we're trying to do is put forward our very best foot forward to give what we can give as a district. And ultimately feel like we can support it if we need to. But I mean, we've gone around and around about this, and we feel like we've done the math, and this is what we can afford to do. Are there any other questions? So just as it relates to, hold on if you don't mind. Sheets got mixed up. I do have some. With regard to Article 3. We received your counter as it relates to Article 3. And
Last session.
last session. And this is specifically related to the clocking in and out of employees. And really, it's a very, very small group of instructional employees that I know you guys are pretty adamant that you do not want these individuals to punch in and out. But we feel like it is critically important for these individuals whose hours, the act where, you know, so because they are hourly, they're paid based on the number of hours that they work. And we feel like it is critically important that their hours be accurate, both for the protection of the employee and for the protection of the district. So these individuals are not, you know, they're not coming every single day. They oftentimes work varied hours. And so you don't have the ability to put eyes on them in every situation. So those individuals who are paid on an hourly basis, we need to have some form and fashion to keep up with those hours. And so that's why we're asking that the hours be tracked using our district approved timekeeping system. So we've changed the language to read, we'll put the original sentence back in there. Instructional employees are not required to punch a time clock or sign in and out at the beginning and end of their workday, comma, unless employed in a temporary or hourly position, which is compensated on an hour for hour basis, at which point the employee must record their time worked by utilizing the board approved timekeeping system at their work site. So what that means in most cases is they would be utilizing true time, just like every other employee in our district that is an hourly or temporary employee.
Question in terms of functionality, okay? So let's say, for example, at one of our school sites, someone resigned last year. And the teacher was asked to take on basically additional job duties above and beyond what her original job duties were, okay?
Hourly?
No, just asked to take them on. So I'm gonna get to that part.
Okay.
So if they're doing their job and their 7.5 is used to do the current job, and they're given additional required duties that extend beyond the workday, that person getting hourly needs to stay on site and clock in and clock out for the additional work that they would be doing? How does that?
No, I mean, I think what we would require is if they're in an hourly appointment. Formally in it, so like, it's only those individuals that are in an hourly appointment that we really need to track the hours to this extent. You know, we have negotiated other, provisions that will account for comp time in the kinds of
That wouldn't be
situations.
comp time, because that's required work that extends beyond.
Comp time, or it could be,
No one take comp time, take your hourly.
or
rate.
an hourly rate.
Okay.
But so the contract allows for both, right? Depending on the circumstances. Okay, so what we're saying is that those circumstances are covered for those individuals. What we need to account for here are those individuals whose appointments are temporary or hourly in nature. Right,
So you only see this taking place at Lively for additional hours, at ACE for hourly as needed, and for summer school.
there's other instances where,
That's what I'm trying to understand, in what other
yeah,
instances.
yeah.
If I hosted tutoring at my school, I had funds to host tutoring, then that would apply then. Because it would be after their work day.
I do tutoring,
There.
Saturday school, 21st century, EDEP. I have a multitude of.
So they would clock in, clock out.
They would clock in for those hourly as needed appointments, right? And
It's they would be in an hourly position, so
Right.
it's their PAF for their regular day
Mhm.
where they don't clock in and out. And then if I needed them hourly, I would have to get special permission and do a PAF for hourly, so they would be into it.
Thank you for the clarity. And then, in terms of consistency, and as we go and talk about supplemental positions and stuff, then we would like consistency that if folks are doing similar jobs of tutoring, that they're compensated in a similar way, that someone's not just getting an $800 supplement for an entire year, expected to work 20 hours after school to do the tutoring stuff.
if you have circumstances where you feel like the supplemental process is being abused like that, please bring
Yeah,
those forward.
I just want to make sure that we're on the same
Right.
page
I
with that,
mean,
and understanding what the hourly situations were.
But I just wanna make sure that I'm clear. Supplemental position, they're not in a hourly.
yeah, they're not
PAF.
our PIF.
Okay.
Right.
No, I understand that,
Yeah.
but I know that the tutoring is inconsistent in the compensation that individuals, because some folks try to do a supplement versus the hourly, and so I
think that we-
Depending on the money. Yeah.
And I think it would be incumbent upon us to, we have appendix B open, we're talking about that on an ongoing basis. Actually, what I want to provide some feedback on next. Actually, not directly next, but in the next couple of minutes, right? But if I think that's an opportunity for us to try and nail down those supplemental positions and try and become a little bit more deliberate with those positions as well. What we need in this circumstances is just to be able to accurately track the time and make sure that the employees are getting paid accurately. Okay, so if you guys will take into consideration what the language that I passed, we're happy to receive counters, but
Is anything in A, B, and C different?
no.
No,
ABC's
okay.
basically the same. Yeah, ABC's basically the
I
same.
know I green,
I mean,
on the last pass through, we had green
Yeah,
majority of it.
we agree, yeah, and I think that the only things that were not green was the timesheet piece, but I think that it just creates a real hardship to have, everyone else on a timekeeping system, and you have teachers, they're on paper, right? And it just doesn't it just creates a big problem. Right, I agree. Consistency is important. Consistency is important, regardless of what you may think, right? That we believe, but I just feel like, if we
So
can
we're really
realize-
focusing on that first paragraph there and the
Right.
revisions there. Okay.
So just with regard to Article 22, we're still contemplating, but I'm sort of leaning towards,
Oh, payroll deduction?
Yeah, payroll deductions, not including any kind of additional language in there at this point in time that would reference, how we come back or outlining it, just because it's not consistent, but I'm still, it's one of those things that we can continue to have conversations on if you like, but
So, and you're talking about in regards to leaving the language in, but having it striked through versus pulling it out entirely with the blurb at the top.
Are you saying you don't even want the blurb though?
we can leave the blurb.
But you don't want.
I
the
don't want
strike
to, I don't want
outs?
all the strike through and all that, just because it will be confusing and messy for future, right?
I don't think any more confusing than this.
Possible. I'm trying to avoid extra confusion.
Extra
So-
confusion. Might as well leave
And
it.
I didn't create that form that you, well, I guess technically I did correct.
Can we
I
leave the
created
old
that
one in
one,
and
but
strike that one?
but,
too, for
um,
just-
I didn't create that methodology. So I can look to the legislature to say, thank you a lot for how we do
Yeah,
things
no,
here.
Quick question about the clocking in and out. Does that include the app instead of going physically to the machine?
I mean, that's not, I mean,
I'm
that's,
just- I'm asking,
My current
for
staff.
point of clarification, that you don't physically have to go to whatever the device.
I'll defer to
You
this.
know, some of my staff prefer to go to the machine, and I see that happen, and some, they have it downloaded on their device and wherever they are. One of my paras, when he walks in, usually we walk in about the same time in the morning, and he will stand outside because he has morning duty with me, and he'll clock in right there. He never goes in the building. He sits back there and he clocks in.
Is that app also a website that they could just have on their computer? So they don't
Yes.
have to put it on their phone? I'm just making sure that
Mhm.
we're all on the same page.
So I mean, it's also, I would also,
Yes.
So I have a quick question because working at ACE for so long and knowing in the jail that cell phones are not allowed. Neither is computers. No internet access. How do you suppose things like that, like the detention facilities that we do have?
they would utilize their normal procedures. I mean, as it
It was a
stands, we
time-
have. If that's the procedure that, we're not absolutely against using timesheets where it's required because of, policies at the jail where we can't go in, so if those kinds of things come up, fine, right? But what we're trying to do is just be consistent across the board with regard to utilization of free time.
Right, so, but when you say must record the hours this way, if they're hourly, then that means they're required to do it that, so. What language would allow for whatever variation in that one?
And it may be that we can, that noted, okay, so. If we need to adjust that language, we could. We could also adjust the language to mean that, okay, there is a process for those people at the jail that before they leave their car to go into, the jail, that they log in and they do their thing, right? I think that the problem is it has to be on network. So there's all sorts of these things that we're trying to figure out, right? But as it stands, it's a board approved process. Right? And so at some point in time, it may not be true time. It may be it may be a different system of process. And in that circumstance,
Well,
the
I'm also
utilization
thinking
of
about,
time card would be
we're
a board
talking
approved.
about lively positions that go into detention facilities or places that are not allowed to have the utensil and weapon, anything. So again, it's just
Well,
not,
also. Let me defer back to Ms. Howell, who's knows about the placement of our clocks in those places, but in 99% of the locations that we're doing business here, right, where we're teaching, we've got a clock that they can hit. And that's the most direct way to do this. Also, so going back to this, I mean, I don't know. A lot of us haven't worked in hourly jobs for a long time, right? But I can remember back when I was in an hourly job, and my schedule would say that I was supposed to work from 6 to 10, right? And I would go to work, and I would go to work till at 6, and I I would oftentimes be there till 10:30 or 11. And I didn't always feel real comfortable putting down that I stayed till 11 because I didn't know what my boss was going to say. The benefit of this is that, no matter what happens, we're paying them for the time that they actually work.
And if they do work
And
over.
if they work
the
over, they
time,
get paid for the time because they work
They won't be,
on an hourly basis.
but they won't be chastised by their
No,
person for working over.
they may be.
I'm looking for.
Hold on, let me say this. They won't, so let me say, they may say, you need to clock in and out on time, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
But they're not gonna say, we're not paying you for this time because you worked over,
So,
right? Which is the
Brett,
part I'm most worried.
Put out to you, because I know it's been a long time since you've been out an hourly position. But I guarantee, looking around this room, we all have a second job that's hourly position. Okay, so we do understand what we want to work, we
No.
get paid for what we work.
I-
We
And that's
also
my point. I want to make
understand,
sure that you are paid for every minute. that
we
you
also
work.
understand that if we are working those extra hours and we do accidentally go over, we do get chastised by our employees. Or if we're 2 minutes tardy clocking
And it
in,
might not be your employees,
oh,
but it's.
it is your
right,
employee.
Sometimes.
If it's 2 minutes tardy, my site will say, you're 2 minutes tardy, and that's unprofessional. See how it works?
Yeah, I understand that occurs.
Okay,
It is important that people be on time,
of course.
right? And but what is most
when
important
you're-
is that
Dealing with a situation before you go in and you have to log in, you gotta understand, we're working with humans. And when a child walks up to you, and hopefully, and we teachers know this, a child will walk up to us and ask us a ton of questions before we're heading out to tutoring. And we don't get down there until 5 minutes after because we're dealing with the situation. Again, with the true time, you then have time saying, oh, she was 5 minutes late here. Oh, well, that was dealing with this situation, or that was dealing with that situation.
and I think in every instance, I mean, yes, it is.
Demetrius is not gonna chastise us. Rusty understands situations come up. You're gonna tell my principal that's how it's gonna be.
What I'm gonna say to your principal is that you have to be aware of the circumstances, right? So if he came to you and said, well, I noticed that you were late, can you explain to me why you were late? And you were able to explain it, I think that, and it's a reasonable explanation, well, then he should take that into consideration, right? But if you're late every single day by 5 minutes, then and you don't have a good explanation, well, then that becomes an issue that is addressable and needs to be addressed,
Okay,
right? But it's not the intent. What it's based on the network.
so the network.
Yeah.
So if they're not, again, not all of our sites are like they're.
So I mean, one off, so just like
At ACE, they're
every-
not at a site that has a network through the school board. They're not. They're at Goodwill, they're at the community centers, they're at sites that are Wacola County. I mean, they're at sites that are not networked to the Leon County School Board.
and in those circumstances, we've made exceptions to the process based upon what is going on at that specific work
Again,
site.
to your point, when we can accommodate
Yes.
for some of
The-
those. special
The bottom line is I deal with one-offs with you guys, with Scott, every single week.
Mhm.
You cannot tell me that if a one-off occurs at ACE, that I will not hear about it. And we will not get it resolved. It happens.
I could text you. I don't know if you're gonna. call.
Yes. But we could sit here all day and pick
Well,
and pick and pick. We just need to have language that
is it that you
matches the
don't
law.
trust the
it's
employees to
not.
put down on a timesheet?
It's absolutely not. It's exactly what I've said. It's that we want to ensure that these people are paid accurately. We have thousands of employees every single day that are like you, professionals that do this, right? And it really only applies to a very, very, very small percentage of the teachers that are out there. Is my thought. Anyway, back to the issue of due seductions. I mean, the reason why we don't want to do that, we don't want to include that language is, as of right now, we've got no indication at all that this is going to be reversed. If it is reversed, then we can always just put the language back in. We don't want to leave blocked out language in our contract for, years and years and years and years.
Would you consider a separate MOU that says you've agreed to return it if it becomes legally permissible?
I think we can talk about that. We can talk about that. We could just, if you want to just talk about it, you want to put together a draft or something like that,
That
of the
says.
terms, and we'll go from there.
Sure.
All right.
No, this is great.
I'm gonna try and touch on I know we only have a little bit of time left. I'm gonna try and touch on the appendix B
No,
feedback,
I'm sorry, the what, I'm sorry.
the appendix B salary supplement feedback.
Oh, okay.
And really, this is more intended to be just conversational. I don't have a proposal that I'm passing. I just, when we talk about what you've sort of proposed, I want to sort of talk through the individual pieces just to make sure that I understand your perspective, and also that you have the opportunity to understand our perspective as it relates to this. Okay. So the very first line of the appendix, where you guys have proposed that we perform performance reviews for individuals that are in supplemental positions following the completion of their supplemental roles, right? The supplemental duties. And once again, I misspoke. I mean, these are supplemental duties, not positions, right? So the bottom line on it is that to look at that, it is just absolutely prohibitive the amount of work that would be associated with doing that. We have problems as it stands, effectively evaluating all of our teachers on a yearly basis. I mean, it takes hours upon hours upon hours to get that done. These supplemental, it would essentially be a barrier to being able to complete supplemental roles moving forward. I mean, I look at my principals and say, if we came to you and said, okay, in addition to doing your normal evaluations for your teachers, you also had to complete an additional evaluative process for each of those teachers again in a supplemental role, what would your response be?
People that suck in this.
What if it was rephrased as a summary sheet from the teacher? This is what I've done, and it is submitted to you. And now you have a data point of Key Club has done this, and this, and they have a balance with the bookkeeper of this amount. And it is merely a summary sheet presented, so you know what's happened throughout the year in that organization. And Martina's not driving Key Club into the ground, and that's just gone under the radar. So instead of the word we put in as performance review, but some sort of end of the year summary from an organization that shows that the organization is still alive and thriving and not totally being dismantled, and that person's just continuing to get reappointed and continuing to collect a supplement.
Nancy, I can only speak from the elementary perspective. I know if my yearbook person is doing what she needs to do because I have a product.
Yeah.
I know if the person over safety patrols that's receiving a supplement, I see the safety patrols all year long. The recycling, like I'm able to see these things all year, but once again, I can speak for elementary.
Yeah.
I would hate to ask a teacher to submit something to me and to add something else to my plate when I'm able to see these things coming to life all year long. I know that they are doing what they need to do and probably more. I personally, at the elementary level, don't see a need to.
Okay. That's where that's coming from.
Right. The next point that you guys have put forward is language that says, however, so following the line that says that appointments in supplemental role is considered to be at will throughout the year, and the individual may be removed at any time. You guys have added, however, if the supplemental individual is removed without just cause, the position's supplement will be paid out in full. I don't know that we have an issue with anything other than the words just cause, because just cause has a very deliberate legal meaning, and it's absolutely not required in a supplemental role. So if we were to change that to say justification, that would be fine. I think that we're willing to, I think we could stand behind saying, however, if the supplemental individual is removed without justification, the position supplement would be paid in full. Okay, because obviously you would agree that the burden of proof associated with that level of work is different.
Or you can pay them. And so I, we'll talk about it, but just cause, we always say jokingly, just cause doesn't mean just cause I want it to, right? It has a like a legal requirement. Justification is just because I want it to. It's justification. Wore too many red shirts. That would be contractually allowed under this language, right? And so that's why
I would
cause
say
is
a
higher
reasonable
barrier on
justification,
purpose.
but
Or pay them. So
but the bottom line is we're not going to agree to changing the language to say to require just cause. So I mean, it's just not something that we're going to undertake, will it? Okay. So, and then the next one, all supplement only positions will be considered vacant at the end of the season or year. Those positions will be advertised and filled as outlined in Appendix B1, BI, B4. So as I'm understanding, you're basically singling out just those positions that are filled, supplement positions that are filled by non-teachers or non-instructional staff, right? People that are only supplement coaches, essential is what you're looking for. That's the way I'm looking at that language. Is that true?
No, I think the intent of the language was people that are only hired on a supplement. They're not on any sort of LCS payroll in any way, shape, or form. So I guess in one way that it's coaches, but then there's a lot of coaches that are instructional staff or they're hall monitors, safety monitors. So that is just supplement only. I guess the way you phrase it, yes. Does that clarify that?
It clarifies
You're
it.
saying the same thing.
Yeah.
We're saying the same thing.
Okay.
I mean, the problem is, once again, the vast majority of these supplement only positions are unwanted by Leon County School staff. Otherwise, they would be filled by Leon County School staff. For the most part, we're not going out to try and find supplement only coaches because they present some sort of extra value to us. We would prefer every one of our coaches to
I
be.
understand. I think the intent of that language is to provide an additional opening pool for teachers that transfer to different school sites to have the opportunity. Maybe they wanted to do baseball, but they've been in an elementary school up until this point. Now they can come in and potentially have the opportunity to coach baseball that has been a supplement only hire external this whole time. So that's the intent of the language. It's not because
But also,
I know that they're unwanted.
who's to say why would someone who has got a history at a school, say it's Rusty's school, Fairview, and he's got a baseball coach that's been there for
Was it a
15
your
years.
managerial right to hire who
been
you
there
want?
I know it's only 2 weeks, but say it's your football coach. I don't know how long say your football coach has been there for 15 years, and he's a pillar of the community in your area, and he is a very good influence on all of the kids that you have at your school. To put that person in a position where they're having to apply for that job year after year is quite honestly just wrong.
Wasn't Rusty's managerial right to hire who he wants? So even if someone internally applies,
If Rusty decides that he doesn't want, that he would rather have his English teacher be his football coach, yes, he has that management right, but he also has management right to continue to use the individual that's the supplement only coach who's been in that job for 15 years.
well, then he can rehire him.
So,
He can rehire him.
but then Rusty also has to go through a process that is unnecessary for quite a few jobs. I mean, how many supplemental jobs do you, in middle school, which is less, by the way, than high school, so less than high school. How many supplement positions are you hiring already?
Supplement?
Yeah, that are potentially supplement only. So like, how many coaches?
Oh, what, 20, 22, somewhere around there?
That is including assistant coaches and all that?
Well, no, I have 2 that don't work at my school.
Okay.
Supplement only,
Yeah.
but he said supplement.
So supplemental is only 2. But then if you're including, say for instance, this became an issue and you had more.
Mhm.
Right? Now it's 2 because you've done a good job of hiring people. Right?
Been left, however you want to call it.
But potentially, if you had to go through a process to fill all of those jobs in August, at the same time that you're trying to fill all of your regular teacher jobs, right? Would that present a hardship?
It's gonna present a hardship in a couple of ways. Number one, that coach, when they see that everybody goes through the same process, might find that the grass might be greener at another location and abandon a school like mine, which does happen within the teaching ranks. Another issue that you might have is after a while, it becomes a little arduous and people get busy. And if you have to keep every year applying for something, you may have forgotten to update something, that slows up the process as you're going through the hiring process. Now you got to put in the year of work study or work history for the last year that you didn't update, and now all of a sudden the season starts and I can't put them out there. So it's unnecessary hurdles, but most importantly, it becomes, to me, disingenuous. If I'm advertising for a position, but I've already hired and I know I'm going to hire this person, that kind of defeats a lot of what we've been talking about, right?
It's an observation. We're saying that going through a process is a waste of time. And that, so I'm hearing that. So does that mean the district is willing to go back to steps so that people know what their career path is? We don't want to waste time in them understanding what their salary is in the future, that we could implement steps and people would know that's where I'll be in 20 years. Because we don't want to waste time. We want to simplify the process.
Noted. I mean, the theatrics are, I mean, I understand where you're coming from.
Well, I guess the conversation comes from when we were going through the season 6, the pause here, and discussing how these should be all rehired. And then this is the instructional bargaining unit contract, is that the initial place where we fell was, unless it's an instructional unit in that supplement, it should all be rehired. So if you're a hall monitor, that position should then be reposted, right? If you're not falling in the bargaining unit. And then when we had additional conversations and workshops around it, we thought that it would be reasonable to then do supplement only positions. So people that are not associated with LCS in any way, shape, or form, they're not coming from another school site over to your school site, their positions get open with the intent that I initially just described was if people move around. And you might have the scenario where a football coach has been there for 15 years, and then you have the managerial right to rehire that football coach. But we also have the right to also see if that's an opportunity to apply for.
But in
as someone that
reality,
shifts in around.
so in reality, in those circumstances where there is an issue to remove the person because they're not doing a good job, because there are performance issues, or even if you get a rock star soccer coach that moves in from another place and he's an English teacher, comes to your campus, that principal is going to take that opportunity to remove that person if there's reason. If there's not reason, it doesn't really matter what process you go through all the hoops you make the principal jump to hire the person that they think is best for the district. They're going to jump through those hoops and they're going to hire the individual that they feel like is the best for the school and the kids, right? So to me, making them go through this arbitrary process of posting a job when ultimately they get to decide who is the best fit for their school is good word, disingenuous at best. And I just think that at worst, it is laborious and time consuming when we need to be focused on filling jobs for teachers, for vacancies that exist, and filling jobs for, filling the other supplements where we do have to try and track someone down who may be willing, and convince people who may be willing to do one of these supplemental roles, because that is quite difficult in a lot of cases.
I like that word, laborious. We're probably coming up with maybe CSAP.
So I get what you're saying, and like I said, we can have further conversations around this
Yeah, I think we
point.
need some additional definitions in the language, right? Because we have duties, positions, hiring, right? When we're calling them all these different things, and if it's a position that we're posting and somebody that doesn't work in the district, they're getting hired on for what it seems like is a position now in the district. But it's just a duty when we refer to it as something that teachers are doing. It's not a position.
I understand your perspective on that, because,
Yeah.
but if you don't have a primary position, then it can't be supplemental duties, right?
Can be up.
So in those instances, it is a position, it's a supplemental
But then if it's a
position.
position.
But if
for
you're in
people that are-
if you're in a teaching role and your primary duties are to teach English,
Yeah,
and we pay you a supplement, we pay you for taking on supplemental duties.
duties, right? So, but then if it's somebody that's in a
That makes
position,
sense.
like other positions, do they not have an annual review because they've only been in that one position?
All I'm arguing, so I understand that
Because
it
it's no
is
longer a
good
duty.
practice to provide feedback, right? But at the end of the day, there are thousands of these supplements,
Yes.
and they are supplemental duties, and that feedback takes place more organically.
Mhm.
And up until now, and in this district, we have never how many years has this district been in place?
This
Yeah,
district,
this district,
long time.
long,
Long time.
long time. We have never done performance reviews for supplements.
No, I hear you.
And
We
to
get
do
a
so,
supplementer, that position.
we're
performance
getting,
reviews.
we're getting to the absurd at this point, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
We
right.
haven't done supplemental reviews because they were only awarded on a year-to-year basis. So that if somebody wasn't
There's-
doing their job, they weren't guaranteed after.
They're
the
still only
next
awarded
year.
on a year-to-year basis. I'm not, no argument with you on that.
So that's.
All I'm saying is that they can be reappointed on a year-to-year basis.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? And so that's what principals do. When they feel like someone's doing a good job through their observations, is they say, hey, you can come back and do this again next year. And if they don't, if they feel like they're doing a poor job, they oftentimes say, hey, listen, I'm gonna find someone else to do that next year.
But we don't negotiate for the coach that just came in off the street for that school. That's part of our contract. That's part of the issue, the disconnect right here. That I think that it's not unreasonable to say he was the coach. We're gonna open it up to see if anyone else is interested, and then I'll still make the decision. Person doesn't have to reapply. You've already got what they've done in terms of their job performance.
I know
And
they
then you
should-
can look at the other candidates and still make the appointment as you wish. Doesn't require them to have to go ahead and reapply.
I understand your argument. And
No,
Well-
not the current head coach. But if
in
it's the current head coach,
so it can be whatever,
Wait, so.
right? It can
but
be
you're
whatever.
saying- But they're saying something totally different than what you're saying. They're saying that they have to reapply every year.
If you open it up.
If we open it up, they're saying that if I advertise it in our normal practice, if we advertise a job, then HR said, in order to be in compliance with, with the contract that says, okay, we're required to advertise a position, well, then we look and say, did they apply for the position? And so, yes, what he's saying is correct. However, in this circumstance, we don't have any contract language that says that we've got to advertise the job. All we've really got is a process that allows for annual appointments and reappointments without advertising. And so I understand it's not worth arguing over these kind of semantics, right? I think that we're willing to
Our contract currently says that it should be opened during pre-planning. I mean, there is a process, or
No, it doesn't. Read your contract.
Little bit right there.
In any event, I think that where we stand on this is we're willing to consider exactly, what you're asking. We'll go back and talk about it some more, but I mean, we've articulated the reasons that we feel like this would be detrimental to our operational, progress. All right,
It's time.
it's time. And we were just having these conversations, but we can revisit this the next time we meet. I'm hoping that you guys will be able to provide a response to our compensation proposal. And we can just, we'll try and bring back written responses, counter proposals to this language. And, hopefully the next time we meet, we can
And I'll have
move
something-
on good terms and resolve all these issues.
The plan is for us to have something for 10,
Okay.
Article 10, because you had passed something Pat
Perfect.
prior that we spoke.
And then you and
shifted
I-
our focus to supplement.
Can we talk after and see if we can't nail down dates?